We are camping in southeast Oregon on my daughter's property, and so we decided that it would be a good day to go to the hot springs and try out that wonderful hot water at Willow Creek Hot Springs. We use the water for a while and then it's time to move on. We see an old bull laying in the dirt. It looks like there's a lot of bull there, and he almost looks like he's got a little Brahmin in him. But he's pretty peaceful and just chooses to stand and watch out for his cows. We go on down Willow Creek a ways and we come to this cave that may have been carved in here by man in the soft pumice type rock, and it may have been used by the homesteaders for storage or even to stay in occasionally. But it's under a really nice cliff, and then we see a spot that looks like it's a favorite spot for the ravens to set and be ravens. We see the chimney of an old homestead shack here. This old homestead house was probably built out of sod. They called them soddy, and now all the sod is gone and the brush is sort of taking it over. The wild roses are in bloom. One of my favorite times a year are when the wild roses bloom. And the old fireplace chimney still stands right on the edge of Willow Creek. And Willow Creek's been pretty much taken over by the beaver. There's just one beaver dam after another, just a series of them up and down Willow Creek, just because beaver pelts aren't worth much anymore and no one seems to trap them. There's a nice cliff for the cliff swallows to nest in, and this is the time of year for it. And we see some nests there with birds moving in and out. It looks like they may not have those nests totally completed, although they must be awful close to it. Maybe they are completed. They build a real nice nest with a little entrance hole out of just daub and mud. And they build them in the protected areas underneath where some rocks have fallen down. And they nest in colonies usually. There's quite a few birds nesting right in this little colony under the rocks. Then we look further and we see what we think is an old raven's nest perched high on a cliff. And of course, there's some old range cows around looking things over. Well, we decided to go down to the Owyhee River after we used the hot springs and looked the bird nests over. And so we need to get gas. So we go to Rome Station to get our gas, and you pump your own here. And it's a little more expensive than some places, but at least they've got it and it's not that much more expensive. As we head out for the Owyhee River, we see a couple old bulls, and it looks like there's a lot of bull going on there. This one old guy is totally out of sorts this morning. He's doing nothing but bawl. This would be a good place for wannabe matador to wave his red cape.
He's at not a half a... He's a big cat.
Good dog.
Huh?
It's a she, isn't it?
And there's a dog. And calf. Calf is going across. So is she. And then there's the dog. I'll get a close-up of the dog.
As we start to drive down into the Owyhee River, we see a little group of chukars sneaking around on their as they try to hide from us a little bit. The BLM has provided outhouses for you to use down along the Owyhee River. Marge goes in the outhouse and came out pretty fast. She said there's a darn snake in the outhouse. So I went in and looked, and here he was, a rattler, coiled right in the side of inside the outhouse in the corner. So I escorted him out. Then we go down to the river and test the water to see if there's a nice big bass.
Oh, he's a nice one.
Yeah, he's big enough.
I caught it on the lure.
Yep.
Tom's got one on. Oh, it's a nice one. Oh, wow, it's bigger than the one I just caught. Nice.
Okay, you lay the camera on the chair.
Got my worm out there.
Okay. Enough. Get him up on the bank. Yeah. He's good enough.
Tom's got one on. Bring him in. There he is. Okay, you threw it in. Now let's see you catch a fish. Okay, he's got one on. Oh, there, it's jumping. Oh, it's a nice one. Okay, hold him up. On. Tom's got a fish on.
Oh, that's a feisty one. You getting the pole? Get the pole in as well.
Yes. Here it comes. It's a nice one. Oh, he's a big one. He's about the biggest one we've got.
Yep.
Wow. Hold him up. Nice fish.
Where'd he go?
He's underneath the chair. Here.
Don't let him get in the water.
Okay. There's Tom's bass. It's a nice one.
Okay.
There.
We've both caught our limit of bass, and now it's time for us to go up and try the hot springs and see how the water is in it today. Since we can't fish any longer due to our limit, we'll go on down to the hot springs. It's a little bit of a rough road there, but we'll be able to make it in good shape.
Going down. Stay over to the left.
We look across the river and see the hot springs crashing its way down over the cliffs and dumping its liquid content right into the Owyhee River. There's someone camped over there. They shouldn't be doing that close to the springs, but I guess they didn't know. As we move on down, there are hot springs coming out on both sides of the river, many of them coming out, and they all kind of converge and run and dump into the river. Some volunteers have made little ponds in some of these on both sides of the river. So if you don't want to go up to the main one with the waterfall, you can use one of them. As we go on down, we see scads of poison ivy. If you're allergic to that, this may not be the best place for you. The real bright green colors of the poison ivy growing real lush here. This year is not quite as much growth on the plants due to the drought, but there's plenty. And the grass is a canary grass growing taller than your head. It's said that a man could ride a horse there and barely be able to see out of it. We reach the Owyhee River and we want to go across to the hot springs with the waterfall. So this means we have to ford the Owyhee River, which isn't that deep. I don't think that it's much over knee deep as we carefully move across the river heading for the hot springs. We can hear the hot springs roaring up above us as the water cascades down, and we're almost to where after we get across the river, we just walk up a little stream that'll take us right up to where the rocks are. We can hear the hot springs roaring above us as we wade up this warm creek to where we come to the obstacle of first rocks, but it's not far, just a few yards up, and we're being real careful not to slip on any of the rocks. Then we get up to where we can see the water cascading down, and here's a rope that volunteers have put in. So you might be able to climb it without the rope, but the rope is a good safety feature. So I'll let Marge climb up first, and then I'll follow behind her. One foot in front of the other, she makes her way up over the rocks, just alongside the waterfall. Sometimes when the wind's blowing, it'll blow the water over and make these rocks kind of slick. And there's always spray from the waterfalls coming over the rocks. One step at a time, she makes her way up the rock till she gets up to where she can see the hot springs pool. And she's almost there. And there she is. She finally made it to the hot springs pool. And oh wow, is that neat. You can get back and get a great back massage, and the water's so clean it looks like it would be even good drinking water, although this day and age you wouldn't want to try it. And the water, it's nice warm water, it's not a real hot one. So she's really enjoying this hot pool. And I'm right in there following her in. From the pool, we can look down over the cliffs and see the Owyhee River winding down below us. And there's a good place to store our gear on the rocks alongside the pool. And a gentle breeze is blowing, which feels real good. This is a good pool to use on a real hot day because it's not a real hot springs, and all these hot springs along this area are about the same temperature. Even some little flowers decided to grow in the spray from the hot springs. And we see the old roads. This is all part of the old road system. It was hand built, and it was for wagons. Sometime after 1860, they even had a mail route through here, and the military patrolled this road looking for renegade Indians, and there was even a battle someplace down along the river here. But I'll bet they really enjoyed this hot springs. But now we've gone back to the pickup. We had enough hot springing, and now we're taking the little 2-track road up from the hot springs up on top that'll take us back to our property on the desert. This water that's running down the road, there's several hot springs that come out and run right down the road. It's always fun to walk down the road in sandals, and you can wade through some of these warm water springs, and it feels real good on your feet. We look back and see the hot springs across and move up this hand-built 1860s road. We can see the Owyhee River as soon as we get up on top, winding its way to the Pacific Ocean after it joins with several other streams and rivers, and finally some of the contents of the Owyhee River will reach the Pacific Ocean. As we head back toward where we're camped, we see the same old bull. He's just laying there chewing his cud. He's the peaceful one of the group, and he has no time for fighting. He's got to get his cud chewed and just lay there relaxing in the sunshine. What a good bull to not even get in a fight when he could. We arrived back at our camp, and it's time for us to take our 2 limits of bass out of the ice chest, get them out of the ice, and it looks like I'm elected to fillet them so we can have us a really nice fish feed. As we head out on our next little adventure, we see a bunch of nighthawks circling over the sagebrush. They're swooping and making their little sound, which is made by the wind blowing through their feathers. And we see them all over the place. Apparently there's a batch of insects have hatched here, and they're catching insects in flight. Our little antelope ground squirrels were certainly glad to see us come back. They were needing some peanuts just as pay for watching over the place. There's one of them that's figured out how to haul more than 1 peanut at a time, and he just husks them out and puts them in his cheek pouch till it bulges out like he's got full-blown mumps. So I see on one side it's already there. And then when he gets all that he can haul in his cheek pouches, he'll grab 1 peanut in his mouth and gallop off across the sagebrush. This guy laying here, this is Stretch, and he always stretches out on the ground so he can absorb the cool of the cooler ground on his belly. And so each of these ground squirrels has a little technique that we can recognize. Maybe we don't recognize them, but we recognize the technique. I was out kicking some weeds out of this soft sandy loam, and I kicked the wrong weed and got stung by a scorpion right between my 2 toes. It kind of burned a little bit, but it was no big deal. It was more like just a very mild bee sting. It swelled up a little bit for a few days and then sort of itched a little like a bee sting would, but it wasn't that bad. There's little ants all over the place. They make their little ant hills out of tiny rocks, and Marge decided she needed some agates. So we're going out and see what we can find in the way of agates. Even the little ant hills here are built of chunks from the agates. And these rocks are all agates here. There's some so big you can't even load them in the pickup. And then there are some that have some petrified wood in them that looks like a piece of sagebrush got inside the agate as it was forming, and then the sagebrush was petrified and makes a really nice specimen. So she'll look around and see if she can find some that she likes the looks of here. We don't need too many of these. They've laid on the surface for a long time, and so the freezing and thawing and everything's sort of cracked a lot of them. So they're not really great quality, but she'll find some that she likes, and they're of all different colors and shapes. It doesn't take long to have enough.
One with a little bit of wood in it.
There's no doubt about it. This is cow country, and you can see them everywhere out here. It's now time for us to go back to the Owyhee River and replenish our fish supply. It's time to catch another mess of fish to cook. So we'll go to a different spot on the Owyhee River. It didn't really seem to matter where we go. Every place those smallmouth bass were biting, and you catch your limit in next to no time. It seems like just about every single cast would produce a bass.
I don't think he's very big. I lost him. He wasn't very big.
This is one of the freshwater mussels that are in here. It's illegal to take any of these, so I'm just going to put him back in the water where he came from.
Tom's got one on. Bring him over this way. Oh, he's a nice one.
See, where's the string?
Okay, there. Tom's got another one on.
At first we caught him real good on a little rapala, but then they quit biting it. So, and Marge had forgot the worms, so we needed to catch grasshoppers to try it with. And so we'd try to catch grasshoppers, but during the heat of the day, they were just hopping away too fast when we'd make a dive for them. So I walk along the edge of the bank where the vegetation was, and the grasshoppers would jump in the river, and Marge would wade in the shallow waters of the river and catch the hoppers as they tried to swim away. And so that worked pretty good, and the fish were just absolutely crazy over the grasshoppers. Again, every single cast seemed to produce a nice bass when we were using grasshoppers.
There's our 2 limit of smallmouth bass.
There we go.
Since we're here and we're done fishing, we decided it would be appropriate to go up the Owyhee Valley a little ways on a gravel road and see the Towers of Rome. This is where the name Rome came from. The first explorers that came here saw all these rock formations, really outstanding formations, and they said this looks like the Towers of Rome. So they named the little town on the Owyhee River Rome. And it looks to me like they named it a very appropriate name. This certainly looks like some of the towers of Rome. These beautiful formations seem to go on and on for miles, and it definitely wouldn't be a worthwhile trip over here if you didn't go see the Towers of Rome. Looks like it's time for us to load up and start heading home. So we're all loaded, got a good coat of dust on the pickup, so everything's fine, and we're heading home.
Our ant control for here, a horned lizard.